Hi, welcome to RCKicks. In today's episode, yes, we're finally back working on this, the Daytona Thunder from Tamiya. Now, if you've been watching the show for a while, you know about 4 months ago, I actually unboxed this and I got it. Well, since then, it's been sitting over there doing absolutely nothing in my build pile that's continually growing. So I thought I better get a move on and actually get one of these built. Now this actually came out all the way back in 1995 and we've never seen a re-release of it, probably because it has a Parma body. Yes, this doesn't actually come with a Tamiya body. Now I've done a full unboxing of this. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a link up here, go check it out and then jump back to this one. But yes, what makes this car special is the Parma body set. Now the body came from Parma, but the decals were from Tamiya. Now this car didn't actually exist. Well, this livery, it was totally made up by Tamiya and it's their interpretation of a NASCAR. Now some people say it's very much along the lines of the Days of Thunder kind of car, and some people have gone and painted it up. Also, Parma did decals for that, and a viewer was kind enough to send me these. Now I know what you're wondering, why didn't I use these instead of that? But we'll come on to that later. Now this is kit 58153. It's a 1/10 Group C. Now it came out on the 26th of April 1995. There was a 3-year gap before this one was released, and what came before it was the Nissan R91R, which I just happen to have. The re-releases of the Group C, well, there's been 2 of them so far. Porsche 956 that we've just got recently in 2024. There also was the C11 Benz that came out in 2022. If you're waiting to get hold of one of these, I don't think we're ever going to see this again, purely because of the connection to Parma, that they're never really going to produce that body. Not only was it a bit quirky that it came with the Parma body, but it also came with a kit motor that you hadn't seen before in any Group C. This kit came with the Dynatech 01R, which is a very special and collectible motor today. So this makes this kit quite desirable and quite hard to get hold of. So in this video, we're going to do a full build all the way up, going to paint the body up, build all the chassis up, and fit some basic electronics in it. Now this is a shelf queen, as it is a very rare kit. So no, I won't be taking out and running it. Sorry about that. This is definitely a shelf queen car. I've already done a full detailed build of a Group C. I did the Mercedes-Benz when it came out in 2022. So I'll put a link up here. Go check it out if you want to see more detail of building up the chassis, which is quite a basic chassis. But most of this video is going to be talking about the gotchas with the body, and there's quite a few of them thanks to Parma. So, right, I think that covers pretty much everything. So let's take a look at what it takes to put the chassis together and then paint up that gorgeous body. Right, you kick off with the servo. Now I'm putting this servo in here temporary until I can find a vintage one, as this servo has damaged gears, but it's good enough for now. Now I'm pretty sure you should be able to find some alloy servo mounts that you could upgrade to. I had a quick look, but one thing you've got to be sure of is that you get the right height. When you look in a minute, you'll see that the servo actually sits off the actual chassis plate so that the servo horn can clear the bottom plate. So you've got to be a bit careful to get the right length, but I'm pretty sure there must be some alloy Tamiya servo mounts that would fit in this. Right, that's the front end done. One thing you need to be careful of when you put the actual box together at the rear is that rear part goes in a certain orientation, as there's a little tab that sticks out. There is an upgrade part for this, an alloy motor mount, but good luck finding one. I found one on eBay, but it was like 120 quid, so it's not worth it. Pretty sure you could probably make some carbon axle, or whether you can actually get one, but I didn't look into it to see whether there was any that have been made aftermarket. Put in the kit motor, all very simple. Build up the ball diff. I actually built it up in this orientation. It was just easier, very simple. This chassis is probably one of the easiest chassis to put together. There's almost nothing to it really. Sorry to drag you away from the Daytona build. We'll get back to it straight away, but I just wanted to let you know we've only got 48 hours left of this video dropping, that you can be in with a chance to win the Egress Black new in box for the price of a coffee. So I'll put a link in the description, head over there, or just Google raffles RCKicks and you will find it. Not only that, but I'm taking the profits from that and I'm doing 2 free raffles. Yes, cost you absolutely nothing, just as a way of giving back to all you RCKicks viewers, that you could be in with a chance to win one of those for nothing. So if you, like many of us, have not really getting much RC this Christmas as things have got so expensive, this is an opportunity that you could get to have a car after all under the tree on Christmas morning. So what are you waiting for? Right, back to the Daytona build. Right, we move on to building up the one shock, and I love that. I've built up so many shocks over the years. Just doing one is nice and refreshing. There is an upgrade version of this, so you could do that. There's not many hop-up upgrades really for this car. It's just so simple. Before you know it, we're fitting the body mounts. Now we just got the wheels and tyres to go on. Now this chassis will only take you an hour and a half to put together. Super easy, but the problem is there's a lot of hours that are going to go into this body, as it's missing a lot of the basics that we take for granted that makes our life so easy. So now we move on to the body, but don't be fooled. Yes, you've put the whole chassis together in the best part of a couple of hours and you're really on a high as it went together super easy. So you think this is going to be done by the end of the day. No, it's not. The body that you get from Parma is missing some fundamental things that you've got to then figure out for yourself. But before we get into that, let's just talk about the livery. Now, I did plan and I have got 3 options. The first one is to go box art. It's a bit boring. Obviously, it's not a real car as well, so it doesn't really fit in with if you're trying to make it look like a realistic real car. But the other side of that is this kit is now quite rare. So as a collectible, and I'm pretty sure Tamiya are never going to do it again, should you then go off and do something else instead of box art? And that's kind of where it gets a bit challenging. Now, the options that I had was like I spoke about before, I've got the mellow yellow ones, and these are Parma, so these are the correct ones to go on the car. So that kind of works with Parma body, Parma decals, that would be okay as well. And I do like that livery and also attached to the film as well. The other one, which I really like, was to go with like a Budweiser one. So I picked these up from MCI and I was going to do it red, still very easy to paint, and then put these on. Now, technically, that body style is close, but it's not the exact one that they actually run as the Budweiser. But honestly, what I know about a NASCAR, and they all look kind of the same, that was a pretty one. I like the gold lettering, so my option was to do that. Then I actually spoke to all the RCKicks patrons and I asked, what do you think I should do? And a lot of people came back and said, just stick with box art. The kit's quite rare. You should do that. So that's what I decided to do. But I really like the idea of doing the Days of Thunder Mellow Yellow one. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep an eye out, and hopefully one day a body will come up again and then I'll pick it up and then I'll add it to this car as well, so that I've got the option of both. And then I'll paint up the original body that came in this kit, the box art, just to keep it as a collectible really, as I'm not going to run this car like I said previously. So that's kind of my feeling, and then I can always do a video doing the mellow yellow one, as I think people would be interested to see that being painted up. So I can do that as a video down the line. If you happen to have one of these bodies that hasn't been painted, get in contact with me, let me know, and I'll probably buy it off you. If you're in the UK, if you're outside the UK, forget it. Import tax and handling fees, it would just be the most expensive body you've ever bought. Anyway, so that leads us down to doing the body, and this is where things go sideways fast, as when you get the body and you start looking at it, you realise it doesn't have any body mount holes. Not only does it not have any body mount holes, it doesn't have any dimples either telling you where they are. Yep, there is no positioning for this body whatsoever. So you've gone from what would have taken a 5-minute job to spending the best part of 45 minutes lining it all up, being very careful to make sure you get it exactly where you want. Now, the other thing that makes this more challenging is the rear arches on this car don't exist. Yes, there is no markings for the rear arches at all. Nothing. It's just a flat polycarbonate. There's no curve, nothing. So lining the body up to cut the holes, what I did was I dropped the car over the full chassis with the wheels on, moved it back and forward, and then just used the front arches to line them up. But the problem is, until you actually cut those holes, the body pitches. Because when you place it over the top, the rear body mounts are taller, it pitches forward, which means that the arches twist slightly. So you've got to be a bit careful. Now, the front arches are actually quite large compared to the wheels, so you do have a little bit of space to play around with, but getting this right is really important. So I spent quite a long time measuring everything before I did the holes. I did the front holes first, and then I did the rear holes. Once I'd done that, that gave me a rough idea of where the arches in the rear need to go. So while the body was still clear, I actually drew round with a permanent marker a very conservative arch, basically following the line of the wheel, because I knew at some point I'm going to expand it out, but for now that was good enough. Then I cut it out. Also, another thing that makes this even harder, the whole bottom section of the car where you cut to the bottom line doesn't exist either. Yeah, that's right. There is no line going around the whole car. So that becomes a real challenge. So what I decided to do was cut long. Just take off a little bit and leave it and then work it out later on. So that basically gets the body fitting but touching the ground. But for now, that's good enough, because obviously you can remove material, but you can't put it back on again. So it's best to go longer first and then work it out later. Now, I knew that the decals that come with it, the blue tape decals, are going to be my guide when I fit them. So we've got to paint it up first, and then we're going to start fitting the decals, and that's when we decide to actually make the final cut, because we'll cut back to that blue line, and then it will give us a lovely clear finish. The next small hurdle that Parma put in your way is there's no film protection on this body whatsoever. So when you paint it, you're going to get tons of overspray all over the outside. So you need to cover that. What I found was a nice, quick, easy way was I used a bit of clean film and then just put some masking tape around the edges to hold it, and that worked fine. As for painting the yellow, well, yes, I used Tamiya PS paints. So the way that I went about it myself is obviously I wanted to back it in black. So going from yellow to black in Tamiya PS paint is a real challenge, as the yellow is very, very translucent. So I ended up putting down 5 or 6 layers of yellow first over the whole car. Then I backed it in white. I did 3 layers of the white. Then after that, I backed it in the silver. I did 2 layers of silver. And then after that, I did 2 layers of black. So yeah, if you decide that you want to back your car, you're going to go from just laying down 5 layers of yellow and being done, to then doing 3 white, 2 silver, 2 black. So you can imagine that takes quite a long time to actually get those all down. But I highly recommend it. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but the car looks much more professional when you look inside, because the yellow is so translucent. If you just spray it yellow and do nothing, it doesn't look good at all. One thing that I made a mistake straight away, the rear spoiler. The thing is, you want to paint the yellow on this side so that when you mount it, it's shiny like the body. If you paint it on this side, it would look dark. But then when you glue it on this side, you see it. So you need to paint this side of it. So what I've done is painted the top on that side and the black on this side. So I have to mask up both sides and then do it that way, so that when it's fitted, it will be shiny yellow. Matte will be on the black, but it'll be down, and then on this side it's shiny, if that makes any sense. But then also you're going to do it in the same way that you do the body, so you've got to do all those layers as well. And I missed a step. Yes, I actually missed out the silver step. So I did it yellow, white, then black, and sure enough, the black pulled down the yellow a little bit, which is a real gutter. Now I could cut it all back and redo it again, but I had another idea of what I was going to do down the line, so I left it to see how it would pan out, and we'll get onto that in a minute. So that was my first mistake, but the idea of doing one side with the paint and the other. That worked really well. Highly recommend doing that. It's worth spending that little bit of extra time. Just don't miss out the silver like I did. So that gave us our colour, and I really like it. It came out really nice, very vibrant, because it was obviously backed with the white and the silver. Now the next thing I did is, when I did the window decals, I cut out any kind of clear. When you put the window decals on, if you leave the clear sections in, you can see it. And I plan on smoking these windows, so I took a little bit of time and I actually cut out the section around the window and where the air vents are in the back windows, and then I cut the air vent out separately and then fitted that. I do that on all my cars now, and it's really worth doing. Also, when you lay down the decals, I cut out as much of it as I can. Again, with the 47 on the roof, there's a big section in between. I went back and I removed it. What I do is I cut out as much as I can to hold them together. Then I put it in, and then I go back and I remove that little section, and then it looks like the 4 and the 7 have just been stuck on independently. But because they were still attached when I fitted them, the spacing is bang on and it looks really good. Definitely worth doing that. Also, the massive Daytona on the front, cut round it and remove as much of that clear backing as you can, and it really just makes the car look much more spot on, because the devil is in the detail. Now, another thing that I've done that you actually see on the box, but it's not actually part of the decals, is they've put a black line around the bonnet. Now, this is quite a large car, so it definitely needs that extra detail. So get some black edging tape and do the bonnet. But I actually went back and I did the doors as well, because it's such a slab-sided car. Doing the doors, yeah, it adds that extra bit of detail. I also did the rear boot as well. Now we come on to the really tricky part. How do we deal with the bottom section? So everything is tied together, so you've got to be really careful. Now, what I found, and the best way that I can advise you if you're going to do one of these, before you trim down this and trim down the arches to be bang on, is the window surround goes first, then the 47 goes on, and the 47 goes just underneath the window decal. But also it tilts slightly, so just put a little tiny bit of angle on it. Then underneath that, you have to put the Tamiya decal. That then sets your lower level for where the blue stripe is going to go. So that's one of your anchor points. Then the next thing you need to do is this decal here has to go in. So it is set at this top point here of where you go, and then you put that sticker. Now that's all one sticker. So if you put it, you know, a mil off of the window mask, that gives you this anchor point at the bottom. So now we have two lines that we have to match, and that gives us where the blue line is going to go. So you can then put the blue line in, giving yourself a marginal gap, and that gives you the position of where you're going to be cutting the bottom. Now, what I did slightly differently as well is, if you look here, you might see I put a black stripe along the bottom to represent that it disappears underneath the car and it's darker down there. And also I wanted it to be fractionally lower. I didn't want to cut too high, and the body, because of the way it sits, you remove quite a large section of this, and I didn't want to go too far in case that I decide to adjust the body later on. Round the front is a little bit easier, because there is a indentation line that goes around the front bumper, and that sets this front section here and the section above it. So once you put that section in there, that then gives you your anchor point for the blue line. So once you fit that down and then you come around the sides, then I did another black bit across the bottom just to match it. Then I trimmed it off to match that. So because of this indentation higher up on the bumper, the front is not so bad. Unfortunately, the hardest part is the rear. And the reason the rear is more difficult is the rear bumper has no markings. So you can set this blue line as high or low as you want. And then when you come around the corner, it comes down. But when you're cutting it out, I had loads of extra. It feels like it's way too high. There's no marking. You just have to wing it really and look at how it kind of works, and then fit it and then line it up as best you can. And then when it comes round, that then gives you the bottom. I added the black line as well and then trimmed it. So the blue line gives you the bottom lines, but without them, it's impossible to get it right. And if you cut it too much, when you put the blue line on, it looks all weird and it doesn't work. So that's how I managed to do it. So you kind of work your way down. But it took me a long time to figure out that. You know, I was looking at putting the blue line, and I put the blue line on first and then realized it was too high and the Tamiya and the 47 wouldn't clear, and then this wouldn't clear here. So don't do the blue line until the last thing. Once you get over that hurdle, the last thing you have to do is cut the arches. Once I knew this was the bottom and this was the bottom, I'd actually got these parts, but the wheel was still the wheel arch was still too small, as I'd left it till last. Then I got my pen and then I just drew slightly larger with it sitting on the ground as the wheel would look. And then I finally cut out that arch until you get it right. Do it slowly, just remove little by little, and then once I was happy with it, then I put the Daytona sticker on there, as it has to basically just go over the edge. There's not a lot of margin, because when it curves over, it gets really hard to fit it and then line it up. So that's how you finally get through the whole process of where the cut lines are, which if it was a Tamiya body, that would take you no time at all, because you would just know where to cut it. But there is nothing from the top down all the way around. The only bit that you get is, like I mentioned, is this little tiny indentation at the front to start to get the front. Oh yeah, the front arches, obviously for some weird reason they actually did those, so they're really easy. If anything, I think they're slightly too large, but that's kind of what it is. But yeah, you will spend a lot of time messing about trying to line up everything, but you'll get there in the end. So after putting all those decals on and getting them all sorted, I then decided to flat clear it. Yes, I wanted to actually turn down that whole kind of shininess, as you don't tend to see it on a car like this, and there's a few other cars that I've done it before. So I put the window masks that were on the inside, when I took them out, I kept them, put them back on, and then blew over the whole car just to take down that shine. So you blow over all the decals and everything, and it just takes the edge off, and it makes it look a little bit more realistic. And after all that faffing around, you have a finished car, and I really like it. There's one thing I would like to do. This bit splays out a little bit and really needs to be straight down, is it needs to have some blocks with some Velcro on it. So just some foam, like a hard foam block with a bit of Velcro just to suck it in, just to make it look a little bit more, because it splays out because this whole section is. So I might do that with some foam, just so it's going to sit on the shelf and then line up the actual wheels properly. So if you're still with me after 22 minutes, I thought it was worth investing the time to try and explain the challenges that I found, as this body is not like all the Tamiya bodies that you'll know. So if you decide to add this to the collection, it could be a bit of a challenge, and I did burn up a lot of time just trying to figure all that out. So hopefully that's going to save you a lot of messing about, and that you don't damage anything fitting decals, especially if you did like I did and fitted the blue lines first and then realized that it didn't really line up perfectly, as you wouldn't know just how tight the sides are. Now, like everything, it's not totally finished. What I did with the whole mistake with the rear spoiler is I put a blue, it's Model Sport decal over it to kind of hide some of it for now. It basically is the only decal I had that kind of was the correct blue, and I've put a little bit here to tie it together, and that looks fine. But whether I'll actually go back and cut it all out with polycarbonate cleaner and try it again, maybe. But being that I've matted everything, it kind of takes out that glaringly obvious mistake. But it goes to show that you've got to make sure that when you put those layers on, the colors that you put on do affect the outside, so you've got to protect it, especially something like the yellow, as just missing out that silver layer, you think maybe going yellow, white and then black would be okay. It still darkens it down, and luckily I didn't do it on all the body, just a little spoiler, so the body's not ruined. And one other thing that I've got to finish is I've run out of sandpaper. So what I do when I do the arches is I Dremel them out, and then I get some sandpaper, wrap it around a spray tin, and then turn it in the arches, and then that smooths out that curve and gives you that real professional look. I've done it as best I can, but I need to pick up some more sandpaper, and then I'll finish off that little tiny bit. But apart from that, everything else is bang on. Really happy with it. just a lot more of a challenge than you might think if you've done lots of other Tamiyas. So just bear that in mind if you get this kit. So there you go. I hope that's useful for anybody who's going to be building these, or if you've been thinking about getting one, I would highly recommend it. Just know what you're getting yourself in for. Thanks very much. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.